process.
Welcome back. My name is Robert. I am the Recovery Guy. Thank you so much for listening. When you hear this podcast, I'm not sure, but I will tell you we're pretty excited. We're up over 700 downloads, and that is crazy when you consider JJ and I started rocking this thing August 2nd, right? And if you haven't gone back to listen to the reintroduction of Introduction to Recovery Guy, please go listen to that. Get a sense of what we're all about here and what we're looking to accomplish, and a little bit of my story and how come I can relate to you, and hopefully you can relate to me. So no matter what podcast channel you're listening to, please continue to listen. Would you please leave a comment? Would you share this? And would you subscribe? And if there is a podcast channel that you're listening to that we're not on, let us know so we can get that information to John Barker, and John can then line us up with that, get that connection. Also, feel free anytime to go to recoveryguy.org. I do have 32 video segments that are free for the taking. I've got all 12 steps. I've got another, 18 or 19 topical guides. Actually, another 20 guides on area topics and different things that revolve around our living this life of recovery. So without further ado, I got Chaz back in studio for part 2. We dropped off where Chaz knew that something had to change. And if you recall, it was when he was in jail and he looked at his physical self and he knew something had to change. So I'm going to turn it back over to Chaz, let him say hello, and we're going to talk about what led to his recovery and what that's like moving forward as he gets closer one day at a time to celebrating 3 years on, December 16th, right, Chaz?
December 26th.
December 26th. Thanks for that correction. An extra Christmas gift for you.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, there you go. So let's go back and let's discuss, Chaz, what led to your recovery, and let's move forward with some of those things on there with the time we have today.
Okay. So what led to my recovery was obviously my first time being in jail.
Uh-huh.
Then, I did the process in jail, going to court, was looking at prison time. Super scary for someone that's never been to jail before. So I asked for help, and I asked the judge, to give me a chance to show him that I can make a change, and that I was serious about making a change. He gave me my second chance. Mm-hmm. He let me out he let me out of jail, and then one of the requirements was that I had to go to treatment.
Okay.
And I was all about it. I didn't care where I had to go or what I had to do. Just sign me up. And so I got out of jail, was on house arrest, and I had to start the whole process of going to treatment.
Okay.
Didn't have a job. I didn't have money. So I had to rely on county funding, which is a process in itself. That took 2 months just to get that ball rolling so I could get into treatment.
Right. And you had to stay clean, of course,
and
the whole time, not to violate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, which is not easy.
No, it's not. And I held myself accountable, and I had myself drug tested.
Oh, good.
On a regular basis, because I knew myself. I knew that if I had the opportunity, I was going to go get high.
That's what addicts do. Mm-hmm. We get high, right?
Yeah. So I held myself accountable. I did the process of pre-treatment. Mm-hmm. I went to some group therapy type stuff, and finally was able to start my treatment process at 4 months sober.
Nice.
And then that process in IOP took 4 months. And in that 4 month period, I had a friend that, it reminds me of Bill's story. Mm-hmm. Because I had a friend that I knew from back when I was using, and I saw a picture of him on Facebook, and I was like, dang, he's looking good. You know, what is he doing different? You know, like I want what he has.
Yeah.
I want to feel that good, and I want to look that good. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so I reached out to him, and I asked him, you know, like, what are you doing different? Like, you look good, you look healthy. And he showed up at my house with a big book.
Okay.
And he took me to my first meeting.
He must have been what we call one of them Bible or big book thumpers, right?
Yeah, he was at the beginning, for sure. But I'm forever grateful for that because he took me to my first meeting, and, you know, I got to experience what AA was all about. Instead of having this preconceived idea of what I thought AA was, that I never tried and didn't ever want to try, I was finally at a place where I was open-minded to go.
Yeah.
And he took me to my first meeting.
Wow. Open-minded, that's, you know, often one of my first jobs or positions in treatment and recovery after I got my degree was at a place called How House, which is a social model recovery home in Victorville, California. And obviously, how? Honesty, open-minded, and willingness. So I'm glad you mentioned open-minded, because that's really, doesn't it take that to think maybe there's another way?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it took everything that I went through to get to that point.
Yeah.
You know, and it sucks that it took 12, 13 years to get to that point. But if I would have stepped into an AA room any sooner, I wouldn't have stayed.
Yeah.
So it took everything that I had to go through to reach the point where I was open-minded and willing and honest, you know, and I'm forever grateful for the path that led me there, you know, because...
you know, we have these bottoms, and you do bring up something really interesting, is that because we hear from people who care from us when they still hope we would listen to them, they're telling us along the way, you need to do something. This path you're on is destruction, and we think that they're the problem, or we say you don't understand what I'm going through, and they try to help, but little by little they drop off because they know we're not going to listen to anything they say. So I do appreciate the fact that you say if somebody would have dropped you in a meeting, right, 6 years into your addiction, you'd have left right away and got high, right? Because
I had at the point I knew I had the knowledge, you know.
Yeah. And
we all know self-knowledge run riot is destructive and leads nowhere.
It doesn't. It doesn't lead anywhere at all. And so you had to hit that bottom to say, I can't go this way anymore, and the only other way is to be grateful for that chance. And I'm so glad that Judge had the wisdom to look into you and say, well, I think there's something different in this guy, because obviously there is. And this judge is looking pretty smart today, you know, allowing you and many others who have made it, you know, by going through treatment. So you're now in recovery. Now you're starting to, after that IOP program, and you know you've got a little physical sobriety. So was there part of you that thought, maybe I can do this?
Yeah, absolutely. I knew I could do it with AA, you know, because when I was in treatment, I knew that treatment was for discovery and AA was for recovery.
Yeah.
And I knew that from the very moment I stepped into that room, you know, and I would remember telling my therapist that, you know, I'm going to stay sober in AA. Like, this is good and I'm glad to be here, but I don't have it figured out, and I need to continue on with working some sort of program after treatment. And they would, well, why do you want to identify yourself as an alcoholic for the rest of your life? I'm not, you know. I'm not going to go to the grocery store and say, hello, my name's Chaz and I'm an alcoholic.
Unless it's going to get you a good discount.
Right? Yeah. But when I'm in a room full of the fellowship, of course, we're all going to identify because that's what we're there for.
Yeah.
You know, so, I knew I could do it with AA. And even though I didn't know what AA was about, I knew that it was my way of finding that connection.
You know, you bring up something interesting, because in the preamble of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that we might solve our common problem and to help others to recover from alcoholism. And just like you felt separated and apart when you went to live with your dad and you started to question so many things. And if you haven't listened to episode 1 with Chaz and hear the story about his growing up, you need to go back and listen to that, and it'll help you understand this segment just a little bit better. But you didn't feel like you belonged there using, and you began to use more. Now you're in the rooms of recovery and that fellowship and that beginning to feel like you fit in. Can you tell me what that was like when you first started to think, remember that feeling where it's like, maybe I am home. Maybe I do. For the first time in my life, maybe I belong here. What was that like?
It was amazing. I'll never forget the feeling that I felt in my first AA meeting and a few more after that, of the connection, not only to the people in there, but to something greater than me. I felt the presence of my higher power in those rooms in the very beginning. I was really open-minded and scared.
Fear's a good motivator.
Nervous, but I saw a bunch of people that were like me, that were winners.
Wow.
That made it, that were where I was and have made it to good standing in life. Yeah. And they were self-sustaining citizens. They had good jobs. They were happy. And most importantly, they were sober.
Now, when you say people like you, are you talking about relating to the story that they would share about what it used to be like for them and you could identify, and then you contrasted that to how you saw their life today?
I mean, people like me that just had something that they were struggling with.
Yeah.
An addiction to alcohol or drugs.
Uh-huh.
We all have different stories and different backgrounds, but the one thing we have in common is that we don't want to drink or drug again.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by people like me.
Yeah. Yeah, because, a lot of times, I remember being out there and a guy said, what your real problem is, you're suffering from terminal uniqueness. And it's terminal because if you don't stop being unique, it's going to kill you. It is terminal. And he helped me understand that, I'm just getting to know you and because our age difference and our backgrounds, there's a lot of differences between you and me, but all the differences between you and me don't add up to the weight of the similarities between you and me, right? And that's what I want to celebrate with Chaz and others. And do you remember feeling that way, that, wow, maybe I'm not different. Maybe I am like these people, and if I see them well, I can get well. And early on, what did that mean to you in terms of a sense of hope?
Oh man, it means the world to me, to be in a place where you're hopeless. And what led me to those rooms to find hope, and hold on to it, and not only find it but feel it. Is why I kept going forward.
Well, I really like that. Touch on that a little bit more, because there's a great distinction, Chaz, and I don't know if you know how much wisdom was in that statement, but not only to find it, but and when you said that, you actually, like, you were pulling it toward you, almost like taking ownership, because so often we see things out there and we sort of touch it, but we never own it. Yeah. So does that make sense? Because that's what it represented to me when you said that.
Yeah, well, you find hope, and to me, when I say you feel it, the only way I can describe that is like the connection to my higher power. Yeah. Because that hope turned into faith.
Yeah.
And that faith just made me stronger. Yeah. And it helped me push forward and keep pushing forward and to continue on taking this thing one day at a time, and just staying in the moment.
Yeah.
So
and as you saw yourself growing in that area and feeling that hope, as you said, and taking it and it grew in your faith, and then you had also mentioned you saw things demonstrating in people who had been there longer than you and saw some of those things. And where did that play in terms of increasing your hope and expanding your faith as you saw it exhibited in other people?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I just think that, I don't know. It's hard to put into words.
Yeah. Well, were there certain people that you gravitated towards as you saw them? And maybe I didn't explain it correctly, but I apologize for that. So people that you would gravitate toward as you saw what you were starting to feel, but more developed in them?
Yeah. And who I gravitated towards the most were people with long-term sobriety. Because that's what I wanted. I didn't want your car. I didn't want your house or your wife.
Not anymore, anyway.
What I wanted was long-term sobriety, And so I surrounded myself around those people because I think it's very important when you're new to the rooms, who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
Because who you do surround yourself with, because every room has their own clique, they mold you into your new recovery person.
Yeah.
And I want to be a good person, and not everybody, I don't want to get into it too much.
Not everyone is.
Not everyone is.
Yeah.
And so the people that, were working good programs, that had a good connection with their higher power, had serenity and were humble. Those are the people that I want to be around.
So with that because the next thing I want to touch on was, when did you know that not only could you, because obviously you demonstrated while you were waiting to get into treatment, you demonstrated that you didn't have to use, right? Even though it might have been fear, didn't want to go back to jail, who cares? You demonstrated that it wasn't necessary for you to use. But not using and recovery are two different things, because we know a lot of people in the rooms, all they can claim is that they don't drink or use. They're sober in the sense of not being high, but they don't have sobriety, right? Or they don't have recovery. They're just not using. So when did you transition, when you realized that you were becoming that person? Do you remember that? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's around the time when I stopped working the program to stay sober, and I started working a program because it was the way of life.
Yeah.
Like we were discussing earlier.
So it was more about what you were getting, not what you were being kept from.
Right.
Okay.
And it's where I'm at today in life is somewhere where I did not think I was going to be a year ago.
Right.
And it's beautiful and it's amazing. And it's in result of the program.
Yeah.
100%. If I wasn't doing what I do today and doing the next right thing and being open and honest, I would not be where I'm at today. And that's how I know, that's why I know I don't have to use again or drink again, and why I need to just keep pushing forward.
And that's great, because you do lead us into the last area that I want to discuss. And again, I really thank you for your time, your vulnerability, and I'm looking forward to becoming more of your friend. So let's talk about what's Chaz doing today to continue to build that foundation of recovery. I know, for me, it took me a number of years to be, still be making amends, right? 2.5 years, 3 years, I was making amends, because a lot of things we forget, right? So I was making direct amends to people in like 5 years of recovery, right? Thinking, oh crap, I did this, or I did that to this person, or man, I never forgot about that, or, what have you. And we go back and we do that. So what are some of the things that you're doing to still clear away the wreckage of your past, right? But moving forward to help secure the day so you can secure tomorrow?
Okay. Well, obviously the things I'm doing today to stay sober and to work a good program is I'll get with the basics, which anyone that's early in recovery should do, and that's have a routine.
Right. Okay.
You get up, you go to work, you have set meetings like I do. I have set meetings that I go to, and I do not miss those meetings. And they're in my schedule, and everyone that is in my life that loves me and cares about me knows that these things happen on these days and at these times, and Chaz isn't going to miss them.
Yeah.
And, I work with other alcoholics, and I have a great sponsor. And the sponsor thing, the recovery thing is always, it's changing and you grow, like I was at one point when I first came into the program and I had a sponsor, and then, I got to a place where I was like, my recovery needs to grow more.
Yeah.
I got a new sponsor and we worked the steps again, and I am forever grateful for that sponsor because he taught me a lot about getting through the steps, and I reached a point where I felt like my recovery needed to grow more.
Yeah.
And I have another sponsor that is amazing, and he's teaching me to be a better me.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
I love the serenity that he has and the humbleness that he shows. And, and so with that, it trickles down into my sponsoring with the people I sponsor. And it takes it to a whole nother level, and I love working with other alcoholics, and I'm on the board at the South Davis Recovery Club as the activities chair. So super involved in being of service. Those are all important things that I think for me that it takes to stay sober and to get outside of self.
Yeah. Selfishness and self-centeredness, we think this is the root of all of our problems.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's great because twice you mentioned my favorite word, which is service. I had relapsed after being sober 72 days, and I came back to the program and started chatting with my sponsor, and I said, what's the key? What am I missing? And he quite honestly told me, he said, Robert, I've never known anyone to relapse who was actively and sincerely involved in service. You want to stay sober forever? Go serve. And to this day, 33 and a half years later, I still serve. I have my credentials to go into prisons. I go into treatment centers. I do this podcast. I'm active on Instagram. I have my website. I'm always looking for the opportunity, And I'm so glad that you mentioned service because that's ingrained in the 12 steps. That's our spiritual obligation, our return, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you look at service, how, the X's and O's and the things that you do are all great, and going to meetings and reading the big book and praying. But without service, how much would you be missing? And what do you get from that?
It just feels good to be of service, like we did, my biggest service, activity that I've done yet was we did a barbecue. It's a barbecue and all the A's, Al-Anon, AA, and Alateen.
Oh, nice.
And it was, it was stressful being of service and putting this thing together and finding people that were also willing to do service, and I learned in that process that it wasn't me doing anything, it was because of the fellowship that we all came together. We all invested our time and our resources to make this thing happen. And it was such a good feeling when it was going and it was all done and said, and everyone had such a good time, and there's nothing that really compares to that, and there's nothing that compares to the fellowship coming together and making something like that happen. It's really great.
So you've gone from this person who felt so empty and so hollow and of such low value that you were almost compelled to use to the point you became addicted, to this person who's clean and sober going on 3 badass years, who now finds his most value in serving others because you have something to give.
Absolutely.
Isn't that a crazy transition?
Yep.
But that's what recovery is, isn't it?
It is.
Going from what I could say broken to whole and going from a person who, I would tell people that I came from nothing. I was convinced I was always going to be a nothing. I was a nothing, convinced I was always going to be a nothing. And drinking and using made me feel like an almost. Now in sobriety, again, my middle name is Moore, right? There's no more settling because I know that I can become anyone and do anything, providing my motives are right. And service is the foundation to that. So I'm so glad that you have found service as a cornerstone of your recovery. And I'll tell you, Chaz, what my sponsor told me, and I'll reiterate it. I've never met a person in my 33 and a half years who is actively involved in service who has relapsed. And I have friends who were there when I got there. There's Buddy, there's Steve, there's Slow Will, there's Eddie, right? There's Rick, there's Texas Mike, just countless people with 40, 45. My sponsor, Jack, passed away in January, God rest his soul, with 44 years of personal recovery, right? Everyone I know who was there when I got there are still serving actively today in and out of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous in some form or another. It is totally mind-blowing. And so you know what that tells me? Keep serving, man. Yep. You know, because if you want what we have and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, then you are ready to take
these simple, certain steps.
That's right. And that's what we want to do. Take the certain steps, service, go to meetings, get a sponsor. So all those things you touched on are like the ABCs of long-term sobriety. So it doesn't surprise me at all that you've had this success. And it won't surprise me when I'm at your meeting, and I will be at the meeting on December 26th to see you take. I wouldn't miss it for the world, man. So it's been a pleasure having you with us, folks. I hope you don't miss recovery, whether you're new or relatively new to the program. I hope you listen to what Chaz is saying, because, you know, sometimes you hear me, and I've been around for a while. Maybe my message gets old, or you say it's easy for you because you've been doing it forever. Hey, this cat has been doing it 2.5 years, almost 3 years. And look where he's gone and the things he's accomplished. And he came from a person who was just as helpless and hopeless as all of us when we get here. Hey, my name is Robert. I'm the Recovery Guy. Thank you for joining us today with this special broadcast. Remember, on any of the podcast channels, I want you to listen, subscribe, comment, share, and don't forget to go visit me at recoveryguy.org. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Robert. I am the Recovery Guy.
I was trying to do everything I